Good afternoon to everyone, and thanks so much for inviting me here. It's a real privilege to be here. I'm gonna talk, I hope this is big enough for people to read as I go through, but I'm gonna talk about Civics Credentialing System, or CCS. This is an initiative I'm from, co-founded an organization called, and CEO of an organization called Team Democracy, in which we're working on strengthening democracy by helping people come together around core principles of democracy. And this is one of our major initiatives. Um, Healthy democracies require both civic skills and civic participation. And CCS is designed to use the power of recognition to make civic learning and participation visible, portable, connected, and motivating. And civic participation is not only a critical factor for democracy, but it also is a powerful form of experiential learning that develops durable skills such as critical thinking and collaboration. So why don't you go to the next chart? So this is articulating a problem. I think even though the audience here is broader than the US, I think you all recognize that the US has a crisis in trust in our democracy, our democratic institutions, that not only is part of the issue on our Congress and our president, but also it's an issue with media, obviously, and even as is shown here with business. And there's really with this this self-reinforcing cycle that occurs. The lack of trust lowers civic participation. There's ongoing polarization that's fed by that, where people get into separate camps that reinforce that they want their camp to win, which increases the fragility of our democracy as well. And this cycle not only impacts our democracy and our ability to function as a democracy, but also impacts businesses. The Society for Human Resource Management estimated that employers lose more than $2 billion a day because of lost productivity through polarization. And so the key to breaking this is actually getting people involved, both understanding how our civic environment works, but also participating more than, that's where you get the understanding on that. So, and that's where people learn to be committed to the broader system rather than just their individual group. So go to the next chart. And the good part of this is that the US has 250 years of its democracy, and there is a robust infrastructure already out there and growing all the time of organizations, people that are committed to the democracy, our democracy, and have robust support in the community. So that's the good news. A bit of the challenge is that it is so many people and it's a bit fragmented, and that the forces that really push polarization are very well funded and often very focused and very good at signaling with that. So that creates an issue about how do you support this? How do you make it? And there's kind of three issues related to recognition here. One is that there's a visibility issue for those that are want to participate in are looking for opportunities. It's how to find them and how to find a valid opportunity that isn't kind of something that really is pushing an agenda. And then also how to signal that you did this opportunity and you support these principles. The other is portability. I go and I get something in high school or college, and does that apply to my workplace, or how does that work? And it's not easy to get that across various environments. And the third thing is connectivity. So I might work with one group, Braver Angels, but does that apply when I'm working in my Civic Hub, and how does that work? So this is all issues that we need to address to be able to have people more fully participate and get the full benefits of civic education and participation. So if you go to the next chart on this, so this is the core thing that we're looking to work on with civics credentialing. At the foundation, we are building off of open digital badges. That's my background's a technical background. I've spent years in IBM where we used open digital badges a lot, and that's really what I came with this. Could we use this to address this issue? The At the base of the technical foundation, it does play those type of things where it's data rich, it's verifiable, it's portable, it's stackable. All those capabilities are there. The challenge is it doesn't really have the context of the civics environment, nor does it spread. If I'm a single company, I can make everything work together. But if I'm across a diverse environment, I have to have some type of standards and approaches to be able to support that. That's where the layer we're focused on, what we're calling the Civics Credentialing Framework. A key part of this is that we're not about establishing kind of a rigid standard. We're really trying, and one of the key things we're focused on this is a flexible model that's customized to meet the needs of particular communities. Within the US, you find an extremely diverse environment. What's going on in California is very different than what is in North Carolina. You have different groups have different needs, but there are some common structures and principles that can be established and guidelines, and that's what we're looking at the framework. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The second area that we added is some credentialing tools and services. This is where to address the issue that the groups involved in supporting civic participation and learning are often not very well funded and supported. They don't have it. So how do we lower the bar that so groups can and facilitate them to implementing and managing it? So that's our focus. Again, the civic learning happens everywhere and participation happens everywhere in a diverse environment. So our focus is to make sure we can support that. So go into the next chart on that. So within the civics credentialing framework, we have kind of 6 elements that we'd established. The first one is the principles, which are really about making sure you can establish trust, a certain set of guidelines that when somebody adds a credential or a badge into the system, there's certain expectations. Among those are the nonpartisanship, because there can be lots of education stuff that's very oriented about reinforcing polarization. So you want to have nonpartisanship, civility, inclusivity, and then as well the local flexibility. So we're not trying to establish something again that is definite across everything, but we want to have some flexibility that would accommodate those needs. We also look at establishing, Serge talked this morning about that range of informal to formal, and that's very important. And what we've done is establish a kind of a standard set of content, which we actually have standards relative to each of the types, the credential types that exist, and that covers the range. For the work we're doing, the informal side on this, which is appreciation, activity, etc., is actually one of the most important, because often the skills are developed there, but that's a lot about developing the identity of who you are. So recognition on those is very important, but we look at the entire range. To support that as well, we have a set of classifications that we built off of a group called More Perfect that has developed a standard set of democracy goals. And those are our pillars, which go the range from civic learning to bridging divides, elections and governance, trusted information and news, and service and volunteering. These aren't rigidly implied, but they allow us to group content, and often organizations fit into one or the other, and they're able to work out patterns. Bridging divides is one of the most advanced on that, where they have a micro-credential. There's an organization, Bridging Movement Collaborative, that has developed a micro-credential that different groups align to. And then we've developed a badge design language that allows us to two things. One, it's easily to recognize what a badge is, and the second is it's easier for groups to create it. And then very importantly, the other thing is we're looking at pathways. This is often simple pathways that represent learning, and things like commit, learn, act, inspire was a pathway we looked at, but more advanced things like civic seals. Every one of our states, or many states, are developing high school civic seals, and there's a pattern of what you're trying to do, even though the set of badges and the structure or who has badges would be different. We want to create these standard pathways that people can replicate. Why don't you move to the next chart? So within the credential service, so having that is very powerful, that structure and approach, but we also want to provide some support, because these are the things we need to get on to be able to leverage the framework as well as digital badges. So there's a range of services across all this. I want to call out and recognize Don's help. He's been essential. He's been our Sherpa and our guru through this whole process. So you'll see a lot of things that might come from Don, and if there's an error in any of them, you can blame me on it. But we have one thing is that we have a whole process. This is again where Don helped us on strategy, credentialing strategy and design, that really is about customizing it to meet the needs of groups. We have a catalog that they're all in, that they can take out. They can have their own catalog. We leverage the Open Badge Factory's Passport as a capability of having a wallet type capability if needed. We also can support issuing badges. And then as we go, we're looking at metrics. There's a model that's out of Stanford called the Social Cohesion Impact Measure that we've looked at how we integrate with, and there can be other models. And then we're also looking at services. One of the big focus over the last year is how do we work with communities? This is particularly in areas like youth civic engagement, and in civic hubs, we've been putting out proposals and we've got interest from another groups of how we integrate together. The power of that is a lot about establishing an ecosystem where players play together and then they can move in various contexts. So let's go to the next chart. Oh, did we lose you? Oh, there we go. Okay. So with those capabilities with the framework and the structure, this allows us to bring in nonprofits and other groups very rapidly and at very low cost. And so we can bring a group in. We brought groups in to issuing credentials or digital badges within a couple of days often. And it allows us and then when they come in, they're able to play with other groups, integrate with them effectively. So that's a key driver of what we're doing with civics credentialing. Why don't you move to the next one and talk a little bit about where we've been and where we're going. So over the last 3 years, it's been a lot about building out the basic concepts and testing things with pilots, usually focused on individual groups. We've got over a dozen groups we're working with now that we're developing and issuing badges across a range of possibilities. We also are working with some groups that involve a community, and that helps us out. But the next step that we're really looking for key opportunities and funding on is to build around a community. And we've got numerous proposals and interest on this, but there's kind of key areas on this would be something like a civic seal. The key target is there's immense interest around enabling the civic youth from 14 to 26. So you take across that whole cycle, and we're looking at a number of possibilities with that. And then once we get that going, you can start replicating it around the country, and then you establish a broad framework on that. So go to the next chart, and I'll summarize a little bit on our benefits. So from an individual perspective, the benefit here is he's now able to develop a persistent set of recognition around it, and he can share the recognition around civic participation and achievement, but he or she is also developing durable skills that can be applicable and evidence of those skills that can be applied. We've had interest in groups that are involved with business communities and how they can play this into their environment as well, including the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And then organizations, they're able to leverage the power of open digital badges and the Civics Credentialing System at a cost point that makes it possible for them, and also play with other groups. And then from a democracy perspective, we're strengthening the people's identification around core civic principles and processes, and then helping counter the polarization and lack of trust. So that's our ambitious effort. You can go to the next chart, and I appreciate again the time here on getting here. I'm very happy, would love to get input from folks on it and answer any questions. And if there's people who would like to work with us, we'd love to work with them as well.
I apologize for the glitch halfway at the end there. I think my computer's getting tired.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
Serge.
Yes, a quick question. One of the things about badges is often they're not very actionable. Okay, you give people a badge and then they will be displayed on their profile somewhere or not. But how actionable are the badges you produce?
So the thing that we try to do is, again, this is where the establishment of these pathways and patterns becomes important. The example would be in the bridging divides, where they've created a micro-credential where it has 3 skills that are involved in getting your micro-credential, and then activity and training aligned to those. So if I'm coming in, when I get my badge, I'm now building towards something. So you're trying to create an environment that has meaning beyond the organization that you're working with as well, into the broader context. And the advantage of the badge is it's a recognizable, it has that core capability of sharing across, different environments. I can put it in LinkedIn, et cetera, on that. So there is the signaling part of it that's significant as well. So I can put it on my website, or I can put it in my signature that's valuable, or I can put it into my portfolio on my passport. But there's also, as we go through this, it becomes essentially a building block. If we work with a state on a civic seal, then they're going to create a pathways that say you got to have a bridging skill, you got to have you got to be registered to vote. Those all become something in building blocks that they build up to the particular item of a civic seal, and then it becomes transferable at that point to, as they go into college, if we're working with as we're working right now with groups like the American Association of Colleges and Universities, it can become recognizable as valuable there in that context. I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
I think can we move on to the next one?
Okay.
Okay, Chris, thank you all so much. Thank you all so much. Thank you very, very much. I put your contact details in there, and yeah, we need to be connecting with each other to build on this amazing work that's going on all over the place in all sorts of contexts. Thank you very much, Chris.
You're welcome.